Okay. Welcome to Private Security Investigators Policy Committee. Calling this meeting to order, and on the 18th of August. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Reading the administrative announcement. This is a public meeting subject to public meeting law, and it will be digitally recorded. Deliberation of issues will only be conducted by the policy committee members, unless permitted by the chair. Remember to always state your name for the record for cases dealing with denial or revocation. Only information contained in the staff report can be considered once the staff report is adopted. Assumptions, outside knowledge, or personal experiences should not be included in any discussion. Individuals who engage in disruptive behavior that impedes official business will be asked to stop being disruptive or leave the meeting. Additional measures may be taken to have disruptive individuals removed if their continued presence poses a safety risk to the other persons in the room or makes it impossible to continue the meeting. Who just joined? Oh, good. Is everybody here then? Mm-hmm. Yay. I love that. Calling for introductions.
When I call on you, please state your name and represent for the record. We'll start with you, Chair Lenzen.
Dan Linson, Private Security Representative for PSIPC.
And then online we have Vice Chair Nakasone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nate Nakasone, Private Security Representative.
Thank you. And then Member Krieger online as well.
Good afternoon, Scott Krieger, representing entities that contract with contract security, private security.
Thank you. And then next up we have Member Flaw.
Ed Flaw, representing the alarm monitoring industry.
Thank you. Member Odd.
James Odd, Oregon State Bar.
And then Member Ralph, also online.
Travis Ralph, Armed Security Representative.
Thank you. And Member Schultz.
Matthew Schultz, Healthcare Security Representative.
Thank you. And last but not least, members.
Elena Snyder, Private Investigator.
Now for staff introductions, Juan Lopez, Executive Assistant, DPSST.
Emma Detweiler, DPSST staff.
Michael Holsapple, DPSST.
Susie Herring, DPSST.
Maria Atwood, DPSST.
Bill Castle, DPSST.
Audrey Anderson, DPSST.
Mona McMullen, DPSST.
Jennifer Howell, DPSST. Karen Easley Holmes, DPSST.
And then we just have one more staff member online, Michelle Morrison. And if she can't introduce herself, then we can just proceed. Chair. That is everyone.
I'm sorry, May 19th.
Morrison, DPSST.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. May 19th was our last meeting, and did everybody have a chance to review the minutes of the meeting? Call for a consensus of those meeting minutes. Okay, hearing no other noise, then we will move on. Michael.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Michael Holsapple. I'm a compliance investigator for the DPSST. Daryl Fink, Private Security Identification number 058027, has been employed by Guardian Security and Protection Services, Private Security Entity number 0521 since December 6th of 2023. On November 21 of 2024, Fink took over as the designated executive manager of that entity, replacing the owner, Michael Guggenmoss, for that role. Since July 26th of 2024, the department's been working on a violation case against Guardian Security and Protection Services. DPSST investigators conducted a compliance check at the business location 71 Centennial Loop, Suite C, Eugene, Oregon on September 25 of 2025. Investigators found the business interest to be marked on the doorway, indicating it was business located for Guardian Security and Protection Services. There was also marked patrol vehicles in the parking lot outside the business location, clearly marked as Guardian Security and Protection Services. I called Fink from the business location. He confirmed that he was aware of the DPSST investigation and had discussed the matter with the owner, Guggenmoss. On December 3, 2025, I again contacted Fink by phone regarding the open investigation, and he said that he would pass my concerns on to the owner. On February 25 of 2026, based on a non-response from the business to all the documentation and communications sent to them, demand letter and demand to examine books and records requesting work schedules for all the private security providers employed by Guardian Security and Protection Services from January 1 of 2025 through February 25, 2026 was sent to Fink. The records were due to the department by no later than March 19th of 2026. To date, I've received no response from Fink. A notice of violation and associated stipulated agreement were sent to Fink on May 18th of 2026. The notice identified a violation for failing to cooperate or respond to an investigative inquiry or DEBR for 2 30-day periods in violation of Oregon Administrative Rule 259-060-0450, Section 3B. The notice allowed for mitigation or stipulation with a reduced civil penalty. The notice was mailed to Fink using regular and certified mail. The notice resulted in a non-response. The full civil penalty amount for the identified violation is $2,000.
Okay, thank you for the presentation there, Michael. So at this point, we are adopting the staff report. Is that what am I correct on that?
Yeah, you
Okay.
motion.
So by motion, discuss or vote, the committee needs to adopt the staff report. To include any changes identified after discussion or return to the staff with instructions for a future policy committee meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I motion to accept. James Ott, OSP.
There a second?
I second.
Okay, the record is adopted and now we need to make recommendation to the board on whether to take action or no action regarding the proposed civil penalty. Do I hear a motion on that?
Scott Gregory, I move that we take the recommended action.
Okay, do I have a second?
Nakasone for the record, I second.
Okay, do we need to call?
Are we taking a vote on the motion to adopt staff report?
Yes, please.
First. Okay, so regarding the motion to adopt the staff report, Chair Lenzon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nakazone,
Yes.
Member Krager,
Yes.
Member Flaw,
Aye.
Member Odd,
Aye.
Member Ralph,
Aye.
Member Schultz,
Aye.
Member Schneider,
Aye.
motion carried.
Call for vote on recommendation to the board on whether to take action or no action.
Chair Lenzon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nakasone,
Yes.
Member Krager,
Yes.
Member Flaw,
Aye.
Member Odd,
Aye.
Member Ralph,
Aye.
Member Schultz,
Aye.
Member Schneider,
Aye.
motion carried.
Okay. So we have board action then, is that correct? Is that how we read it? There will be board action. So it's sent to the board.
Yes,
Got
there's
it.
no additional doing this.
Got it. All right, Michael, we have something else.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. My name is Michael Holsapple. For the record, I am compliance investigator for DPSST. On January 27, 2026, the department received complaint number 26-1 PSE regarding an unpaid wage claim that had been filed with the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industry against the owner and designated executive manager of Olaf Security Group LLC, private security entity number 7339, Joseph Sanchez Sr., PSID number 086458. A second complaint was received on March 20th of 2026. Both the complaints indicated that Gregory Tollefson, PSID number 130633, had been employed by Olaf Security Group LLC to provide private security services. Tollefson submitted documentation of his work schedule with Olaf Security Group LLC from September 18th of 2025 through January 19th of 2026. On April 2, of 2026, I interviewed Tollefson along with Hunter Powell and Christina Wedden. Tollefson and Powell both advised they were hired to perform private security services for Olaf Security Group LLC. Wedden stated that she was hired as an administrative assistant for Sanchez, and she drafted an employee handbook for all private security providers employed by Olaf Security Group LLC. Tollefson and Powell stated that Sanchez would regularly tell people that they were hired to be maintenance workers, but they were issued outer vest carriers, shirts marked security. They were issued badges, flashlights, pepper ball guns, radios, handcuffs, and their work for Olaf Security Group LLC. The reported duties included parking lot patrols to deal with loiterers and unruly homeless people during or near the businesses. They issued trespass notices, marked vehicles for removal, and reported trespass issues to law enforcement. On April 28, 26, a notice of violation and associated stipulated agreement were sent to Sanchez, allowing for mitigation or stipulation for a reduced civil penalty. The notice outlined violations for employing Tollefson as a private security provider for 4 30-day periods when he had not completed the training and application process required by the Private Security Services Providers Act in violation of Oregon Administrative Rule 259-060-0450, Sections 2I. On May 26, 2026, Attorney Christopher Brown, representing Sanchez, sent a mitigation letter to the department denying the identified violation in the notice and claiming that Sanchez had employed Tollefson as a maintenance worker and he was never employed to provide private security services. In the letter, Brown indicated that, quote, he was employed anticipating that he would do private security after he completed training and courses. In your packets, you'll find the application submitted on December 18th of 2025 by Tollefson for certification as an unarmed professional. Tollefson listed his employer as Olaf Security Group, LLC, and his job title listed as, quote, maintenance/standby security. There's also an employee profile that shows Tollefson was never certified as an unarmed professional, even though he had completed the training course due to no payment in fingerprints being received with the application packet. On June 15th of 2026, Tollefson submitted the tracking log for his account on the Therms app, which was used during the period of time he was employed by Olaf Security Group LLC. The log indicated the job duties performed by Tollefson during his work schedules. Log entries include the following duties: foot patrol, vehicle tow, vehicle citation, observation, field contact, parking lot violations. The department rejected the mitigation submitted by Sanchez's attorney and notified Brown in writing on June 23rd of 2026. The full civil penalty amount for the identified violation is $4,000. The department has been in ongoing negotiations with Sanchez's attorney and has reached a verbal agreement with Sanchez where he will stipulate to the identified violation. DPSST is still waiting to receive the signed documentation from Sanchez for that.
Okay. So then, by motion, discussion and vote, the committee members shall adopt the staff report to include any changes identified after discussion or return to the staff with instructions for future policy committee meeting. Do you have a motion?
I motion to accept the report. James Ott, OSB.
Do you have a second?
I second. Scott Kreger.
Thank you, folks. Call for a vote then.
All right, Chair Lenzen,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nakasone,
Yes.
Member Krager,
Yes.
Member Flaw,
Aye.
Member Odd,
Aye.
Member Rao,
Aye.
Member Schultz,
Aye.
Member Schneider,
Aye.
motion carried.
So thank you, Michael, for the record. It is now adopted. And let's provide recommendation to the board on whether to take action or no action regarding the proposed civil penalty of $4,000. Do I hear a motion?
I have a quick question.
Hmm.
You say he stipulated to admit it. Has he passed the deadline to send that paperwork in signed? Is that why we're discussing this? Because he's already past the deadline? Or is he?
He is not. So the reason that we're going forward with this is because of the inconsistencies of the statements that we've received from Mr. Sanchez. And the fact that we want to get this through the process in case he never does actually file that stipulation. His attorney has indicated to us that he plans to. We haven't received that yet. So this is the next scheduled meeting of this committee. So we set it for this meeting rather than pushing it off another 3 months to your next meeting. We want to get this through the process for approvals and that. We can always settle this with him through stipulation, regardless of how the board votes. If it's done before we get to the point of sending him a formal notice of intent to impose a civil penalty and it becoming a final order.
Okay, thank you then, Ed Flaw. I motion that we take action.
We have a second.
We also have a question from Vice Chair
Oh,
Nakasone.
sorry. Yes, Nate.
Nakasone, for the record, I don't know that it's relevant to the motion but just for context in the investigation, I noticed there was some issues with the instructor and the training provided. It looks like that instructor has 2 PSID numbers. I was wondering if that could be clarified and if there's any separate investigation regarding the instructor. Hewson, Matthew Hewson.
Oh, and I get Susie Herring for the record, Nate. I think there's a junior and a senior. I don't think it's one individual with 2 PSID numbers.
Nakasone, for the record, copy that. Thank you for clarifying.
Great, good questions. Any other questions? So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
James Odd, for the record, second.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second to take action regarding the proposed civil penalty? Call for a vote.
Chair Lenzen,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nakasone,
Yes.
Member Krieger,
Yes.
Member Flaw,
Aye.
Member Odd,
Aye.
Member Rao,
Aye.
Member Schultz,
Aye.
Member Schneider,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. So we have a proposed rule change for an OAR presented by Jennifer Howell.
Thank you. Jennifer Howell for the record. Today, we would like to work through some proposed rule change information for you. The rules in question are Administrative Rule 25906000015, and then 0030 and 0145. I'd like to walk you through how DPSST interprets a reasonable request in our current administrative rules and get your feedback on potential changes to the requirement to show a DPSST certification to a member of the public upon reasonable request. Just for a little bit of background, this is a discussion item today, and no final decisions will be made for the rule changes themselves. So we're looking for your initial feedback so that we can prepare a proposed rule change for public comment. In June, DPSST received a petition that requests that the Board on Public Safety Standards and Training amend the current rules to include a definition for what's considered reasonable request. Process-wise, DPSST has 90 days to respond to the petition by either denying the petition in writing or by filing a proposed rule change. The agency had already planned to address the language in an upcoming broader rule review, but because of the petition timeline, we're moving forward now. You have a memo that summarizes the current rules, the petitioner's suggested language, and the department's draft concept. We also included a copy of the petition and a list of video clips the petitioner submitted. Those video clips show encounters where members of the public asked private security providers to show their DPSST credentials. So as I previously stated, private security providers must carry their DPSST issued certification or their temporary work permit and must present it when asked, either upon demand to a DPSST, a law enforcement officer, or the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis OLCC, or upon reasonable request to any other person. So looking at the petitioner's draft changes at the top of page 2 of the memo, the petitioner wants to create a standardized objective definition of reasonable request, and the draft includes conditions like the request is calm and not meant to distract or intimidate, the provider isn't actively managing a confrontation or emergency, and the requester is interacting with the provider or on the premises in a way related to the provider's duties. DPSST provided a draft rule change on page 3, and it takes a different approach than what the petitioner submitted as suggested changes. Instead of trying to define reasonable request, it would replace the term reasonable request with language that seeks to address the petitioner's primary concerns using language that's still on the broader side of guidance. The proposal says a provider must show their certification unless it would compromise safety or current operational duties, and they should show it at the earliest practical opportunity. DPSST finds that this draft language allows the provider to decline to present their certification, their license, or their temporary work permit when it's not safe or interferes with their current duties. And it allows the provider to postpone presentation of the documentation until operationally feasible. We included 2 additional rule changes for consistency. You'll see changes to 259060030 that would modify the temporary work permit language, which currently is a mirror of what's in Rule 15. And instead of being a mirror, we would just point to Rule 15 as the requirements for presentation. And then for rule number 0145, the crowd management rule, we would remove the requirement to show the staffing ratio documentation to the public when upon reasonable request. Basically, those ratios are tied to exemptions that may not be commonly known. A person who has a question or concern would still be able to submit a public records request or a complaint to the department. At this stage, DPSST doesn't see any fiscal impacts with either set of proposed rule changes, the petitioner's rule changes or the department's rule changes. It's meant to be clarifying for private security providers on how to engage with a request for their credentials. That's the broad overview, and we'd like to open it up for the committee's discussion on and feedback on the draft changes and what reasonable request means and what would be appropriate moving forward.
We're looking for discussion on this, folks.
Nakasone?
Nakasone for the record. This was an intriguing read. Conceptually, I think it's an excellent thing to consider is to provide clarity. I have many thoughts on it, and I can think of a number of scenarios that could come up with field work, probably too many for the scope of this meeting, and I don't want to dominate the floor, but I would just say, I think we need to be not hasty with making any recommendations, and we really need to flesh this one out to make sure that we're not pinning the rule down too heavily to exclude situations. I think there's this term that's mentioned in the issue section of the packet, operational ambiguity. And I just want to point out that Oregon law scatters the word reasonable throughout many of its laws for good reason. and that is to take into account that it cannot write laws that account for every single totality of circumstances, some that lawmakers may not have even thought of or come up yet. So I think there's some wisdom in keeping it, I wouldn't say it's vague, but keeping it a little bit general with the term reasonable request. But yeah, I just would suggest that we really flesh this one out before we make any recommendations.
Helena Snyder for the record. Is there an actual definition for reasonable request?
Thank you, Jennifer Howell, for the record. I would first to answer Helena, no, there's not a definition of reasonable request. It is a pretty basic standard across many different principles. The going back to Nate's train of thought on fleshing it out, I do want to clarify process, the process that we're going to be following with this. With the petition, we do have to file a notice of proposed rule changes. So with this policy committee discussion, what we'll be doing is taking your feedback and then making a proposed rule change, submitting that proposed rule change for public comment so that we can more broadly engage the state, giving the state an opportunity to also provide feedback. And then we'd be basically coming back to the board with the petitioner's request, the discussion that the policy committee had, and the public engagement that we had through the public comment, and continuing to craft what the language would be. So this would not be any final decision or official recommendation today, but DPSST will file a proposed rule change to start that public comment process after we've had some discussion today.
Schultz?
Matthew Schultz for the record. As an instructor, I think this has always been the hardest one to talk about, is what reasonable request is, especially with first-time students that you're going through to get certifications. I really like the way the agency's approach is on this. I feel like it adds the operational needs into it, and I think maybe doing something a little bit different upon the public upon request, doing something terminology wise in there about a reasonable request there would help suffice some of Nate's concerns too about how in going through OARs and ORSs, a reasonable request is scattered throughout it. But I think the approach the agency went is really thoughtful about trying to be conscientious of the public perception of requesting it, as well as the safety of the officers that are out there doing their job on a regular basis.
Nakasone, for the record, I second everything that Matt is saying as an instructor myself, and it is a challenging section to teach, and there's again a lot of things. And to clarify my previous, since we are just starting the process, I am absolutely for getting the process started and having this discussion. I think it's an excellent discussion to have.
Dan Lindsay, for the record, is the petitioner anonymous?
No, your petition is attached as item A.
Okay.
Nakasone, for the record, again, I don't know how too deep in the weeds we want to get with this, but I just want to make a couple of points on these A, B, and C recommendations here. We're not necessarily doing away with any of the operational ambiguity. We're just pushing it down to the next level. For example, letter A, the request is made in a calm and orderly manner. We would then need to further define what would be considered calm and orderly, which would go back to the concept in the totality of the circumstances of what's reasonably considered calm and orderly there. And then I also just wanted to generally comment on the videos that were supplied in evidence submission attached B. I see a lot of those having context missing from them, so it's kind of hard. But in some of those cases, I don't necessarily see how further defining it would have helped those situations. So all things to consider.
So in looking at the two different perspectives and looking at what the petitioner submitted with the A, B, and C, those are very detailed and descriptive of scenarios, and still subjective. And the department's proposal on page 3, which is still broad and still potentially subjective. However, just encompassing what those scenarios are, but just in the broader meeting, focusing on safety, interruption of operational duties, and then still requiring that request to come at a reasonable time. Which end of the spectrum does the committee feel is the right direction to head in as far as trying to further correct that ambiguity in reasonable request?
Helena Snyder for the record. I felt that DPSST's draft, and I believe Nate even touched on this already too, basically takes A, B, and C and consolidates it into one and addresses each one of their concerns very well.
Are there any perspectives that we haven't considered? Any potential red flags or concerns in trying to implement these changes in the field?
Nakasone for the record, again, I could come up with a number of scenarios. One off the top of my head would be the person who asks to see a person's card like every 15 minutes throughout their shift. They're not necessarily affecting duties or the operation of that person. But I would say that's overkill. I would say that's unreasonable. See, if you had it, 15 minutes ago, you probably still have it.
Travis Stroud for the record. I just want to say, so with reasonable requests, how I view it with everybody is we're private. We're not law enforcement. We're not public safety professionals, right? We're not hired by the public. We are private. We are hired by private clients to provide private services. Reasonable request to me would be only if there was an actual reason to see our license, not just because. When you have a person that's walking down the street and they ask to see your license when you're working at post, but they have no reason to see it because they're not related to what you're doing, or they're in your space, or they're in your client's space, what is the reasoning I need to show that to them? Right? There's no reasonable, it's an unreasonable request, in my opinion, to have to show it to a public member that is not pertaining to what I am doing on my post. Now, if it's something on my post, or I teach students, if you're working somewhere and maybe you're in a situation with the public and they ask for it, depending on the situation, then sure, show your license if it's going to make the situation feel more comfortable and it's going to verify who you are and why you are there. But I think the only reasonable request that is really deemed where I should have to show it is for any public safety professional, law enforcement, government official, things like that. But if it's a person that is just a random person on my post that's in my store, if it's going to help with credibility to show them, yeah, I'm here, this is what I'm licensed to do, then okay. But other than that, I can't see what would be reasonable for anybody just to ask me, what's your private security ID number? What is your PSID? Let me see your card. Why do you need to see it? I'm a private professional hired by a private institution, hired by a private company to do my job. So what is the reasoning you actually need to see it, unless there's something pertinent to why you need to see my license?
Jennifer, can I jump?
Thank you. Of course.
Marie Atwood for the record. I just want to note a couple of things. One, I'm really grateful for this discussion. I think this is an issue that comes up frequently for our team, in the sense of just the the number and variety and confusion surrounding complaints we get, where civilians are frustrated that they believe subjectively their requests are reasonable when maybe they are arbitrary or repetitive or even harassing from the public safety or the private security provider's perspective. The thing that I always like to highlight when we're talking about rule changes is that they're beneficial to our constituency and to the agency, just so that we're all on the same page with what our rules and standards require. But I see their primary benefit as being a source of clarity for the public, right? They can look up our administrative rules and our Oregon revised statutes, and they can know, is this a situation that warrants me filing a complaint against this professional who's just trying to do their job? So in that sense, the clarity that we could provide by revising this rule, I think, would have a benefit to us internally as an agency, all of our constituents, and Oregonians at large. I also wanted to note that Susie and her team have some internal guidance that they use, because reasonable request is not defined in rule, but that they use when they're determining what to do with a potential complaint regarding a reasonable request. And some of the things that their internal guidance kind of hinges upon are whether or not the request is, as we've talked about, directly related to the provider's duties, if the request is contextually appropriate, so not arbitrary or out of the blue or unnecessarily repetitive, that it doesn't interfere with safety, and that it's timely and feasible from an operational perspective. So those are the guidelines we're already kind of using to assess whether any of these complaints that we receive have merit. And I do think that a rule revision for clarity's sake would, in the very least, align our public-facing information with our internal-facing guidance. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.
Member Krieger?
I don't have a question. Thank you for that, but I just have a thought, and I can understand the intent of this. I kind of agree with Member Nakasone and Member Ralph in that I think we're not finished defining this yet. I can play scenarios in my head where this could be intrusive. This could be this could delay a security professional from doing the things they need to do. I can also differentiate between the need to clarify between uniform personnel and not uniform personnel. And I just think there's more work to do to kind of help to provide some clarity, because I could also see this being someone getting themselves into a bind because they're focused on providing the security mission and not being deterred or ignoring what they determine to be somebody's attempt to either distract them or delay them in executing that mission. And I feel like there's more work to do on this. Just my thought.
Member Flaw?
Yeah, I want to just say I really agree with Member Ralph. I think what you have here, the DPSST came up with, is a good beginning, but instead of just at the earliest practical opportunity, it should also say with a valid reason for needing to see it. I mean, anybody can just walk up to security and say, "Let me see your license." Why? There needs to be a reason. Why do they need to see it? Do they have questions? Are they just verifying that I'm certified to do my job? What's the reason behind it other than harassment?
Member Ralph, just another thing too. I think it does need a lot of revision onto what is an actual reasonable request as to why we need to show it, because it's just like if you're driving down the street and somebody asks for your driver's license, you get out of the car. Well, why do I need to show it, right? We are private, so it could get in the way. It could go into officer safety because maybe you're dressed a certain way, or your nationality or whatever may be, the demographics of who you are. They could then write a complaint about something that maybe didn't even exist or it's not pertinent to what's going on. I mean, in my opinion, my perspective, right, your client needs to see your license and make sure you're licensed to be there. Company also needs to see it to make sure you're verified to be employed. And then any kind of law enforcement, public safety official, government workers, things like that. Yes, there's a reason why you probably need it, because you need to know my licensing, but there has to be a really good reason as to why the public would need to see it, because there's so many things that could potentially go wrong to showing that. Just like police officers don't have a lot of times have their home address on their on their driver's license. Reason being, if they go up to a gas station and need to get something and then show their ID, now it shows their address too. So people could get that license and maybe they didn't like you or like how you approach something, and then they're going to put a target on your back, and now they know your name. They can look you up on the internet. They could probably do a quick search and see where you live. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I think there needs to be a lot of revision, a lot of reasoning as to what and why I need to actually show it, and what is an actual reasonable request, not because the public just wants to see it for whatever reason. There needs to be an actual verified reason as to why I need to show my license.
Thank you. Member Schultz.
Just to put it in from a healthcare side, Matthew Schultz for the record. We get asked by Oregon Health Authority, CMS, Joint Commission, a lot of federally regulated bodies that aren't defined in OR or the OAR on looking at licensures, and we have to present it to them when we're doing our assessments and all that, and they use that terminology of upon reasonable request in those. So healthcare has a whole different side too that we have to be conscientious of when we're doing something like this.
Thank you. Vice Chair Nakasone.
Thank you, Nakasone, for the record. I want to make 3 points, and I promise I'll be quick. One, it says in the packet, and we've heard from DPSST staff that this is creating the ambiguity of this term is creating workload for them significantly, and I think that is something that we should highly consider as we have these discussions. I've always advocated for whatever relieves them of as much workload and makes their processes and efficiencies better. Number two, to Ed and Travis's point, I think anecdotally there is a widespread general misconception among the public that the card is what gives the provider the authority to do things at their property, and it does not. That comes through the private contract. The card is what verifies and ensures that we are in compliance with state DPSST standards. And that is it. So I think as we consider this, that's a misconception among the general public that I think we need to work to correct through OAR, et cetera. Point number 3, and this may be the soapbox that I die on here, but with electronic modernizations, moving as much of the process online as we can, I think that could forego a lot of the ambiguity that has come up. I could see a world where we don't need physical cards, and it could be a PSID number using iris to verify. It could be a QR code. I think that's the way the world is going, and a lot of that could be solved long term with those further modernizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your floor.
Okay. So yes, I've heard a lot of discussion and support of basically item C in the petitioner's request, tying the request to an engagement with an individual in the course of one's duties. So we will take a further look at that piece of the petitioner's language as well as the existing language, and we will continue to create a draft. Again, it will be a proposed rule change for the purposes of collecting additional public comment and having further public engagement. And then we'll be coming back with more revised content to consider. Are there any other suggestions or potential items that need to be addressed with this concept?
For Susie Heron, for the record, could you explain the timeline too and where we're at with that?
So DPSST will have to submit a proposed rule change to further continue this process sometime between now and the beginning of October. The public comment period is generally open for anywhere from 21 days to 30 days. We would have that. I'd probably consider having a public rulemaking hearing to go with it. So we would not be looking, we would be aiming to come back in, that would be October, November, to the February policy committees. To the February policy committee with additional information on what was collected in public comment and what our finalized recommendations are.
Again, listen for the record, is it required that DPSST makes a proposed rule change?
It is required, yes. If we do not, we need to respond to the petitioner with a denial in writing. But because it's a known concern, DPSST feels it's appropriate to move forward with addressing it. So we're comfortable with starting the proposed rule change, knowing that it could be several iterations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let your constituents know that they will have a moment for feedback.
Thank you all for the discussion. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have a subcommittee appointment. Loosely. Who presents this?
Excellent question.
Was the information provided in the packet?
No. This was the only thing that was in the packet.
And it was just provided to the chairs.
So we provided, yeah, we received it, yes.
Okay. And then it's just a vote at the policy
Yeah.
committee. Most of the time, we try to make sure that the other members have a copy of the information as well, but.
All right, we have a candidate for private investigator position. That's an appointment to the private investigator subcommittee. First term effective August 18th. The person is Ryan Loosely. And so we call for a vote on this. Is that correct? All right. Calling for a vote.
Chair,
Do we
would you like-
we want to move.
Yeah, Chair, would you like me to pull up the information and share it with the rest of the crew?
Sure.
Give me just a minute. Okay, so Susie Herring for the record, and as you all know, since you have filled these out before, so we ask for a resume to give us information and a letter of interest. So I will go ahead and read that letter of interest. He was writing the letter of recommendation, or this is a letter of recommendation from an attorney recommending Ryan Loosely, who works part-time as a city manager on dependency caseloads. He's a diligent, intelligent, kind, dedicated professional who genuinely cares about our clients. He also has a strong interest in how the system that affects our work functions in everyday practice and remains committed into helping those systems operate effectively and efficiently. Ryan would be an excellent addition to any committee in addition to his insight and professionalism. He's hardworking and a dependable individual who can be relied upon to actively contribute and follow through on committee responsibilities. Our office fully supports his appointment to the DPSST Private Investigator Subcommittee. And that was Attorney at Law Gina Marie Stewart. And then he also presented a resume that shows his current employment, his association with OWALI, which is Oregon Association of Licensed Investigators, of which he's the current president for, and looks like he has been a member since, or at least a part of vice president and regional director since 2019. He said, I'm interested in serving on the private investigator subcommittee because I'm passionate about strengthening and advancing Oregon's private investigation profession. As a licensed private investigator, I've seen firsthand the importance of high quality continuing education, clear professional standards, and meaningful ethics training in promoting public trust and investigator competence. I've been actively involved with the Owali Board of Directors since 2019 and currently serving as president, giving me a strong understanding of the diligence, commitment, and collaboration required to accomplish the work of an important committee such as this. I'm particularly interested in improving access to continuing education, enhancing the quality and relevance of training opportunities, and reducing ethics complaints through proactive education. I believe my practical experience, commitment to professional excellence, and collaborative approach would allow me to make a positive contribution to the subcommittee's work. And then he gave the letter of recommendation. Is there any other questions that you might have? We provided education and employment, but I wasn't gonna announce that unless you had questions.
With the Weaver State, so
What's that?
the Weaver States, not bad.
And I would say that he lists that he's been a private investigator since 2021, present part-time. Oh, actually, and excuse me, and then prior to that, 2013 to 21 full-time.
All right, folks, any other questions, thoughts, ideas? And we,
Thoughts also, sorry, Helena Snyder for the record, thoughts also, or do we make the motion first and then discuss?
Yeah, I don't think it matters, but if you want to discuss, maybe have that discussion now and then the vote.
Okay, Helena Snyder for the record, I just want to be sure, and it sounds in Mr. Loosely's letter that he is looking out for all investigators, and I would hope that that would be the case, representative of our entire 900 some odd licensees versus just and not just his voice for Owali, which is the association. So that's just an effort of clear transparency. So.
Yes, Susie Herring for the record, that is expected of all subcommittee members and policy committee members that they're representing the state of Oregon. And so there's an orientation and that Marie and Juan will be doing that's part of the discussion too. But thank you.
Thank you.
and for form and function, we're doing a vote on this, is that correct? Call for a motion, is that also correct?
Mhm.
Okay, we call for, oh, sorry.
I move to recommend Mr. Lucy for the private investigator subcommittee.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second?
Helena Snyder, second.
First, second, and a vote.
Chair Lundzen,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nakasone,
Yes.
Member Krager,
Yes.
Member Flaw,
Aye.
Member Odd,
Aye.
Member Ralph,
Frozen.
Oh,
Oh, no. Member Schultz,
Aye.
Member Snyder,
aye.
maybe he came back.
Came back.
I thought he froze out.
Sure, while we have a moment, I just want to also verbalize that there still is one more vacancy on this subcommittee. So those of you that may have individuals out there in the industry that you're aware of, certainly let them know. If they're interested, there's still one more vacancy.
Is it representing a certain?
Still, just for the subcommittee is what I'm speaking
is
about.
it-
right?
PI.
Yeah.
PI, yeah, just for this PI subcommittee. Yeah, we have various, as you can tell by this empty table, various positions here as well.
Member Ralph, you froze in the middle of the voting process, so you are still pending.
Yeah, for some reason it disconnected me, but okay, so aye, by the way.
Thank you.
Motion carried.
Awesome. And we have an agency update.
Yes, we do. Juan, do you want to make sure our screen sharing is gonna work? Okay. Can our members online see the screen share? Let's see some heads nodding. Okay, cool. This is Marie Atwood for the record. We're going to have a little bit of an unusually robust agency update today because it's a very significant update to this group and to the industry at large. So some of what I'm kind of doing some introductory statements. Some of what I'm going to tell you are things you already know, but that are very relevant contextually for the discussion we're going to have today, which is largely revolving around budget. We will have a few other speakers coming to present some information to you after I'm done. And then maybe toward the end, if there are questions, we'll stick around as long as anyone wants to discuss this. So Juan, can you click through to the first slide? Maybe? There we go. Okay. So just by way of background, obviously, having been on this policy committee, you're all well aware that our private professional certification and licensing program regulates a large constituency group, about 35,000 constituents, I think. Is that
Quite
about
more
accurate?
like less than
30-ish?
30.
Okay.
Yeah, so 30.
Nevertheless, this is, I want to say, around fivefold more than any other constituency group that DPSST works with. We have a team of about a dozen people that handle all of that work, and that's compliance, regulations, certifications, licensure, maintenance, education. This program is unique at DPSST because it is funded entirely by fees collected and penalties assessed, very similar to the penalty cases you decided today. These fee or funding sources are by requirement, obviously, not by choice. This particular division at DPSST is the only one that, for example, does not get to avail itself of CFA funds, the criminal fines account, which funds a considerable amount of the services we provide. Our PPCL team does not have the ability to access funds like that to continue to do their services. Today, what we want to do is walk you through some of the bigger picture details of how our agency expenses work to continue service through our PPCL group and the realities of how we're going to have to shift our approach to funding in order for this program to not just be able to provide excellent services to our constituents, but truly to survive, to keep the lights on. Over the last several months, as you're all well aware, we've discussed at length with you the reality that we were going to have a fee increase. We've gotten lots of very valuable and critical feedback from you. Ultimately, this group elected to vote to support that fee increase. And just now in July, our board also ratified that fee increase, and it'll be imposed beginning in December. For historical reference, the last time fees were increased for this PPCL program was in the 23 to 25 biennium, so not terribly long ago. And we very much understand and hear you that it feels like you may still be reeling from the previous fee increase only to turn right back around and receive the same information again from us. But historically speaking, the last time there was a fee increase for private security providers was more than a decade before that 23-25 fee increase. And the last fee increase we imposed for private investigators was 16 years prior to that. This is important because DPSST differs very dramatically from other fee-based programs and boards in Oregon in the sense that other agencies that support fee-based groups are typically increasing fees every biennium, sometimes more regularly than that, just to keep up with the basics: cost of living adjustments, the cost of supplies and services, legal fees, and DAS mandates, none of which are in any agency's control, DPSST included. The other additional piece of information that's relevant to today's discussion is that as of this last round of budgetary submissions we had to send in to DAS, we were also made aware that fee-based programs such as this have to have a 90-day reserve fund accounted for. So that means we have to have enough excess funding in a program to keep our service level up for 90 days, in addition to making ends meet in terms of breaking ground. So in July, as I mentioned, the board ratified the 10% fee increase that you voted on recently. And that projected revenue was incorporated into the budget we had to submit to DAS over the past couple of months to account for the next biennium. DAS has a team of financial analysts who are responsible for essentially projecting all of our revenues, all of our expenses, and ensuring that budgetary adjustments we're seeking, like a fee increase proposal, are going to be successful in the sense that they are going to be sufficient to help us make ends meet. In our recent communications from DAS, the CFO has confirmed for us that the 10% fee increase approved last month is not going to be sufficient to sustain all of our costs moving forward through the next biennium, 27-29. Today's portion of our agency update is our first opportunity to let you know this information. We just received confirmation from DAS today that the 10% fee increase was approved. So this is very, very new information to us. But what I do want to let you know is that moving forward, we're going to have to establish a new norm for ourselves at the agency, for our constituent groups, that fee increases are going to have to become at least a regular part of our budgetary discussion. And I know that it was a very difficult and at times contentious discussion to have with this policy committee, and understandably so. If we could, we would not shift costs off to our constituents. But it is the only way that we can avoid either a substantial loss in the quality of services we provide or a substantial loss in our ability to engage in compliance work, neither of which we're willing to take on. We want to be able to provide the highest degree of service to our constituents and to the public and not have to put compliance on the back burner in order to make ends meet. When we received the information from DAS that was kind of concerning that 10% wouldn't be enough, our executive leadership team at DPSST essentially came to a halt and put everything that we were doing on the back burner in terms of agency business, and spent weeks going line by line through our budgetary documents, our historical budgets, to make sure that the information that DAS was working with was as accurate as it could possibly be. We explored every possible alternative avenue for shifting costs or changing funding sources that the agency could feasibly argue toward to avoid further increases. We have been able to incorporate some proposed changes that DAS will allow us to do to shift funds, or not funds, but shift expenses largely at the agency. But because this program is the only fee-based program in the agency, we can't share money with our other divisions. We can't offset costs to our other divisions. This team is very much insular in terms of budgetary concerns. We have checked, rechecked, triple checked our budgets in terms of the math. The numbers are accurate to the best of our knowledge. And we have no other cost cutting strategies that are going to be sufficient for us to avoid fee increase for the next biennium. So what we've done today is put some information on our PowerPoint that you'll see on the screen. And we have invited both our finance team to go through the details. We're going to show you the data. We're going to show you the numbers. We will field as many questions as you might have about our expenses and how we justify fee increases. But just for context sake, Susie and I were talking earlier today. She had pulled, 1 year of the past biennium's expenses. Can you run us through how much of our expenses are not essential?
Oh, the non-essential one?
Yeah.
Actually, it's a very small amount. What I did is I ran the numbers for all what we call PCA codes for the different groups. And there were 3 that were the 6th highest, and those accumulative were $450,000, almost $453,000. And that was 91, almost 92% of our expenditures in those areas. And so there was about $3,000 that were just for like other costs of whether it be pens or papers or copying or little things like that. Yeah, the larger contributors, just to share with you, were background checks, which are sent over to OSP. We do collect that money, but it does go in as an expenditure for us. Legal services, we all know that we've been talking about that every meeting, that was our second highest, which also includes the hearings costs that we pay for those, which is additional. Merchant cost fees, which is what is paid for when we run credit cards. The agency is absorbing that fee as well. And then our office space rent that we pay here to have our cubicles and our hallways and our file rooms. And then the cost for our database skills manager. Those were the 6 highest, but adding all those together, there was very little left for anything else for services that we pay for.
Thank you, Susie.
Sure.
And the reason why I wanted her to share that is because I know we've said this in kind of broad strokes terms in our previous conversations about the fee increase that was just ratified. But this program operates on not just a lean, but about as lean as you could get a razor thin budget. And we have to pay our employees' salaries. We have to have an office building to work in. We have to keep the lights on and have telephones to serve our constituency and the general public. So for over the course of a year to only have $3,000, maybe $4,000 of our budget dedicated to something that could be determined extraneous, which is like pens and paper, is a remarkable amount. So all that being said, I'm going to invite our finance team to join the table, and they will walk you through some slides that show you the budgetary breakdown from the past several biennia and the projected budgetary concern that was raised to us about next biennium that is going to lead us to kind of go down this path of regularizing fee increases as a new normal to keep us both aligned with other similarly structured agencies in the state and to not put us in a position where we have to sacrifice service quality or compliance. We want this industry to be high performing and for there to never be a question of its legitimacy. And that's what we're here to do, is to provide legitimacy and integrity to the industry. So that's where this increased discussion is coming from. So I'll hand the table over to our finance team.
I'm Mona McMullen, DPSST Chief Financial Officer. And so this is just some key factors. Marie had already touched base on quite a few of these. Just going through the Senate Bill 300, the unknown of that part of the program, DAS, where we're shifting, where we need to have that 90-day reserve, and just, you know, the program needs to be self-sufficient. Those are some key factors with your fee increase. And then this is just showing over time. So this goes starting with 2019 biennium, 1921, and it just shows your revenue with your expenses and then the balance moving forward. So the blue line is what's been legislatively adopted budget. And then the orange is what your actuals have actually came in as, so that you can see over time, the budget's been a little bit higher than what we're actually doing for revenues and expenditures. And so the key part of this is where you can see in the 25-27, where the expenses are actually coming in over the revenue amount. So what that's doing is that's making your cash balance go to a negative. And so with, you know, moving forward without doing something with the fee increase, the program isn't going to be self-sufficient.
Mona, can I interrupt for just one second? You may have stated this and I missed it, but that column for 25-27 biennium, does that incorporate the 10% projected fee increase that was just ratified?
That's without the fee increase.
Without, okay.
Because at the time that we created this, the fee had not been approved yet.
Okay.
So this is just going over so you can see the actual numbers versus what's on the slide. So if you want to see it in bar graph versus actual numbers, that's what this slide is. It's the same as the previous, just so you can actually see the numbers. So that you can see where we're coming in for the actuals. And then for the 25-27, the bottom right-hand side, you can see the actuals where that dips into the negative 178,000. And then this slide shows that with the fee increase starting September 2026, a 10% fee increase, how that changes your revenues. So for 25-27, now we have the revenues projected almost 4.8 million. And then for 27-29, coming in just over 5 million. And then if we adopt another fee increase in July of 2027, going into the next biennium of another 10% to hit, that's where you would see the change in the 27-29 going up to 5.6 million. So the reason that this number is important is because when we go to that 90-day reserve, that's about 624,000 that's needed for a cash reserve to carry forward. So that's where with that additional fee increase, we now have that reserve requirement met. I think that is it. If there's any questions.
Yes, Atwood, for the record, I know you all don't have the PowerPoint in your possession, so if we need to go back to any slides, let us know and we can pull them back up. Otherwise, questions and discussion.
Helena Snyder, for the record, is it my understanding then it'll take approximately 4 years to get up to that 90-day reserve? Is that what I saw? So 2 bienniums from now?
So we have 1 year left on the current biennium, and so this would be 3 years.
Okay.
So it would
you.
be June of 2029.
Oh, 29, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
we're in 26, sorry.
Nakasone, for the record, I apologize if I missed it, but do you have any reserve now, even if it's not up to the 90 days? Yes and no.
Helena Snyder, for the record, what with the budget, I guess, what did we have in reserve, or was there reserve set up? Was there like a 60-day versus a 90-day prior, or?
Right.
And Mona McMullen, again, we tried to have a 45-day reserve, but with the revenue that's coming in, it's just not covering the expenses at this point. So we're just eating more and more into that cost of the reserve that we had set aside.
Understood. I was more wondering about practice, prior practice, and then moving forward. So thank you.
Yeah, and most of the time, yeah, it was 45 days.
Odd for the record, so there's mentioned that this might be a sort of a perpetual thing that happens every biennium. There'll be a fee increase. Is that kind of what's being proposed?
Marie Atwood, for the record, I think that that's a reasonable prediction. I mean, we may find ourselves, it's hard to predict, right? What state budgets are looking like, what the national financial outlook looks like year to year. But I think as long as it is understood that we will be considering fee increases every biennium, we may be able to try to structure them in a way that it's every other, but some of that has to be TBD, depending on circumstances at the time.
And every biennium, there's a standard inflation that's added onto your budget. So it's anywhere between 4.2% to 4.9% that gets tacked onto your services and supplies expenditures. And then there's always the personal services also. So you have the cost of living adjustments that occur. And then, just regular step increases for employees. So you have at least 5% added on to each budget cycle.
Dan Lindsay, for the record, who establishes salaries?
It comes from Department of Administrative Services. And they take a snapshot of what you're currently at for your salaries, and then it projects that to the next biennium. So it takes into account what step employees are at and adds a step that they'll receive the next biennium.
And structurally, DAS has every position, every employment position with the state, it has a schedule, a salary schedule essentially with steps. So you start at a certain salary, and if you make the next step, you go up to a next number and the next number. Those are fairly predictable, but they do increase based on basic inflation and COLA related.
Yeah. And they just added
An additional step
this,
this past legislative cycle.
yeah.
So I think in February 2027, there'll be an additional step was added.
Okay, so hierarchy of expenses, did I hear that we've got, Lindsay, for the record, background checks were one of the highest costs, is that correct?
If we're talking about, if we're not talking about personnel services, because obviously that would be number one.
Yeah.
That would be the highest cost of what, it's the individuals that are working in the program. You put those things aside, then yes, the background checks. But the background checks, keep in mind, please, is that we take in that revenue for the fingerprints anytime the fingerprints come in. So right now they're $45. They're going up to $48 because the FBI is raising that cost. So we collect that. We get charged for it, but then in turn we pay for that back with the money that we collect.
Okay, so is, let's, for the record, are the merchant services factored in that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But isn't that a separate line item on?
it's a separate line item, sorry, but
So 48 covers the background check plus fee?
the 48 covers the background check, which is OSP and FBI together. It's not a background check that the staff does, if that's what you're asking.
Well, the people use credit card to pay for that, correct?
No, that goes through, I mean, they might, but that goes through Philprint. That's something that we don't collect. Is that,
Okay.
oh, but you're talking if they pay for it with they pay the fingerprint fee with their merchant card.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Lindsay, for the record, line up because I got questions. Merchant fees, are those negotiated?
Not currently. It's the vendor that we use.
Is it decided by somebody else who the vendor is, or does the program have opportunity to negotiate that?
No,
No.
no.
I don't believe so. Audra Anderson, for the record, it's a service that they can charge based off of the point of sales that are coming through PSPI. I don't believe it states within our agreement that it's negotiable. We could get back to you, we could look into it and get back to you.
And I guess I would add on, it's like we are using a vendor, and at one point we were talking to Treasury about other vendors, like if there was a possibility to offset that cost to the individual, not the program. And I believe that takes a legislative change to incorporate that to favor too.
Jennifer Howard, for the record, I can't confirm or deny. I just know that there have been past bills and past sessions approaching that concept for
Yeah.
all state agencies.
Yeah.
Not just us asking for our own authority, but
Mhm.
trying to figure out what to do about merchant fees for the
Yeah.
state of Oregon and state agencies as a whole.
Okay.
So it has been past legislative discussion. It just hasn't made it anywhere yet.
Okay.
So the constituents pay their fees, and then the merchant is not part of the fee? Is that what I'm hearing?
We get billed the merchant fee for the dollar amount,
Like
based
the
a percentage,
processing, yeah.
a percentage based upon how much each transaction is.
How is that recouped?
It's not.
No, that's part of our overall expenses in our budget.
What's a percentage?
I don't
Like
have a
per transaction.
percentage. But I could tell you it was almost $40,000 in the for 1 year.
Okay. So X is the value for a certification, credential, endorsement, and somewhere along the line, $40,000 is paid by the department. And if it's the constituents that pay for everything, it sounds like we're not paying. The constituents are not paying for the fees. $40,000 is.
Fees, correct.
Is this something that we should look at being recouped by the?
I guess Susie Heron for the record, that's why I was looking at Jennifer, because I don't think we have the ability to ask the individual to pay for that merchant fee. But if you're asking if the fee, the certification fee that we collect could be higher to cover the cost of the merchant fee, that would be something separate.
Small business head.
Yeah.
Somebody pays for that fee. And if we're zero base, we're minus anyway, no matter what.
Marie Atwood for the record, I think it might just be 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Either the individual would pay the fee along, I guess, upfront. Or the merchant fee process stays the same it is now, and we have to do fee increases to recoup it on the back side. So either way, it's just a matter of at what point in the transaction does that cost get absorbed?
All right. I would love to see some clarification on that. We can recoup that in some way.
Fair.
In the conversation as we go forward. But
Yeah.
not for today. Okay.
Odd for the record. So if we have more licensees, the revenue goes up and the budget landscape could potentially change if there was, say, a 10% increase across the board. So I guess for licensing numbers, I know the PIs have bumped up. Is there a trend in security for how many folks are getting licensed and that fee revenue? Is it staying the same, going up, going down?
It's not, Susie Herring for the record, private security pretty much stays the same. I mean, it's almost a revolving door, new people come in, others go out and retire. It was interesting for PIs, actually had gradually gone up, which is surprising to me, which is great. But unfortunately, we did have some, expensive AG bills that tacked onto that as well. But security for 2 decades has probably fluctuated maybe like 3,000 overall. Just, it usually stays pretty stagnant. Yeah.
And in terms of revenue versus expenditure, even with new constituents, new fees, new revenue, along the same lines, that's going to be more personnel time or FTEs needed for processing those certifications and maintenance, more compliance cases, more AG bills. It's just, yeah.
More people, more problems. Lindsay, for the record, what we do know in conversations with many people in this committee, we have a lot of people performing private security services and not certified, not paying. So if there was a way that we could, and I'll put this on the table to consider and look at, a way that we could potentially do more outreach, which then of course would mean cases and potential AG fees. But if the industry, 25-ish thousand, 30,000 people in the state understand, even though I am in a outpost in Nowheresville, I still need to be certified, or hiding in a whatever corner. I think that worry and concern for human to get certified could be met, and then income could be increased. Does that make sense? Let's get out there and get them certified.
Yeah. And we have, Susie Heron for the record, we have through this budgetary conversation been talking about what else can we do as far as getting more individuals into compliance? Because I've gotten the question, why don't they? Well, they just don't.
Right.
And
There's no peace behind it.
Yeah.
If we don't have the personnel and the time and the resources to either enforce the rules about being certified, people still won't do it.
And I can use, our example of some of our cases that have been going on for
Years.
3 years
Yeah.
plus, and it's $2,000. There's
Yeah.
a lot of time and money on personnel costs for that as well. So it's really just trying to figure out how.
Helena Snyder, oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Helena Snyder, for the record, you got me thinking about that in particular, and this is probably a question more for Jennifer. Is there a way that this committee can look at the fine levels? Can we adjust them, make changes to them so that if we're increasing our license fees, why can't we increase the fines for those that should be getting fined and should be paying more? We're having to, I feel like we're having to pay more just to do the right thing. So if there's a way that maybe we can consider looking at our fine structure and that, I think that might behoove us too.
Susie Heron for the record, and they have not changed since the inception of what they were.
Jennifer,
That,
do you have any
that thought crossed our mind.
on the time or likelihood of success that we would have in trying to increase the fines?
Sure, Jennifer Howell for the record. The maximum civil penalty amount is set by statute. So it would require a statutory change. It is definitely something that could be explored. That's just a lengthy process. I don't know if it's something that DPSST would be able to request for 2027, because there are certain timelines that have to be followed in order to make requests and submissions. That would mean that we might not be able to make such a request until 2029.
And Susie Heron, I would add that the maximum amount is set, but we only have one license at the maximum amount. So our other certification levels are at a much lower amount. So those could be something we can look at adjusting without having to change by administrative.
By rule.
Yeah, without having to do a statutory change for those.
For the record, I probably was mentioned, what percentage of the current revenue for the program comes from those penalties?
Ooh, that is a great question. And I know I have that somewhere. It's not a lot. I can see. Trying to think where I can pull that number from the civil penalties, like just for the last year that we've gotten. I can do it on my spreadsheet. I know. Stand by, or you can please discuss and I'll grab you.
I'll piggyback on that too, Helena Snyder, for the record too. It's also a matter of if they pay.
Yeah.
We can assess the fees all we want, increase the fees, but I guess then it's a matter of being able to collect on those fees. And I know that that's having been at a state agency myself, and you assess those fees and you could have payment plans for 30 years and maybe never see it all. So I guess maybe there's also the idea that we would want to talk about avenues of making sure that we can collect on them somehow.
Marie Atwood, for the record, that's an excellent point. I think part of the difficulty with establishing predictable revenue is that it's really hard to guarantee some of our revenue sources, including civil penalties. If someone is having a penalty imposed because they've been non-compliant for 3 years, why would they suddenly become compliant when the game is over? In which case, all we're doing is furthering our position in the hole.
Nakasone, for the record, I'm going to piggyback off Helena's idea there and put an idea that I put on the table a while ago. I think it was actually during the last fee increase, but that was endorsements for certifications. Right now, we've got armed and unarmed, and we've got constituents out there with an unarmed certification carrying batons, tasers, less lethals. We had an endorsement system where the constituents that needed or their company required that they carry those could buy an inexpensive endorsement that would increase the amount of income coming in, and it wouldn't negatively affect the companies that don't have any need or desire and the constituents to carry any of those items. I'm guessing that would require law change as well, and then process development. So it'd be more work on the front end, but long term, that could be a good chunk of income coming in.
Susie Heron for the record, just to give you the number, unfortunately not the percentage, but we brought in just under $62,000 in civil penalties from June to July of this year. Previous June, sorry, the 1 year.
So June of 25 to July 26.
Thank you.
And Marie Atwood, for the record, sometimes in a single month, we'll get a bill from the AG's office for $60,000+ dollars. So
How can they pay? What methods?
Anything?
So they can use credit card again?
So we'll pay for
have another fee.
Yeah. But I have been having conversations with the compliance staff on what those civil penalties look like moving forward, because there's been folks that have been allowed to stipulate, which they pay half the civil penalty and come to compliance. And so we're having conversations about the severity of those.
For the record, and this might be more existential than anything, but is there risk that escalating the fees reduces the amount of folks licensed in the programs, reducing the income? Like, is there a point where the diminishing returns really start impacting things?
And excuse me, you're talking about the licensing and certification fees or the civil penalty fees?
Sorry, licensing and certification fees, folks. Stop.
Disincentivizing people for
Yeah,
joining in.
exactly.
Okay.
I feel like that's more of like an industry known right now. I mean, I think there was some concern of that, like getting that feedback from public comment of how it kind of lends, and I can use Nate as an example of maybe not being able to hire as many people that they need to because of having to pay those individuals and cover those costs of that. And it just leads back onto the client, and it's just a domino effect. But it's difficult to predict that on a 10% increase. Yeah.
Nakasone, for the record, yeah, I was going to say it's absolutely, from the constituent side, it's absolutely not existential at all. It's a very real reality and a potential risk that I know many companies have considered.
Next steps?
Yeah, Nate, did you have a comment?
Nakasone, for the record, I was going to essentially, into Dan's comment of next steps, say what steps need to be taken to increase the capacity for compliance enforcement, because it kind of seems like that's one of, if not the biggest bottlenecks there.
Susie Herring for the record. I mean, we're doing what we can at the time with what we have. I was going to report on our agency update. We did 20 compliance checks from the last meeting. So we do have Michael and Autumn kind of go out frequently and doing compliance checks and finding people out of compliance, which then creates the caseload and civil penalties. So we are continuing to do that. And I would say that this last probably year, we have seen a lot more compliance cases and the staff being able to go out, because it was kind of after COVID, it took a really long time for people to start getting out and just hitting businesses. And then we were also inundated with House Bill 2527 of the entity licensing. So now I think there's a little bit of a calm to allow folks to go out and do that. So we've been seeing a lot of that lately. So I know that that will be helping some.
Yeah, Marie Atwood for the record. I mean, the ideal solution, right, would be for us to be able to hire a bunch of new FTEs, but even that requires state approval, and it's remarkably difficult to get the state to grant you permission to hire people to keep up with the costs they're imposing on your agency.
Nakasone, for the record, what is making that difficult?
State budgetary concerns largely at that, you know, above the agency level, but at the state level, it's not an easy talking point to float when we're doing our budget requests.
Dan Linson for the record, remember the beginning of this program and the fear of fining and deficiencies and a lot of those types of things really got folks to comply. And is it still a principle that the idea is to get people in compliance versus fining? Is that still a principle?
Education and assist in compliance.
Education.
Assist in compliance.
Assist in compliance. So that's it. What we call it a principle?
Sure.
A mission? What? Okay. So I'm just going to throw this out there as an idea. We knew about all of this stuff in the 90s when there was press. I think getting the word out to the press for education, to business owners, people that are hiring, to the professionals, to the entities, all of this stuff. If everybody understands to get a private security officer, you have to have this compliance list. As I think that we went into this COVID thing with let's replace police with private security. Of course, we knew that didn't work, but there's still that talk. If not police because they're short-staffed, let's do private security. That conversation still comes up. Education to the public that is not an option, but it is an augmentation to the law enforcement. Law enforcement seems to have this public-private partnership ideas going, and it seems to be helping. Observe, report. I think if that were to be considered, carefully crafted, to avoid some backlash on, well, what are your fees, and then diving in deep, and what's your problem, getting to that. I think the education to the public could help us potentially get folks into compliance, because now they know, and they know if they don't, then this will happen. Because right now they can go, well, I've got this fake PS20, I can go work. But if they know that if that fake PS20 is a finable offense, because you know what some people is, in just in some of the cases that we're dealing with, those people didn't know. So I'm proposing for you to consider getting some good press out of this. Think about it.
I'm thinking, and actually we're hitting our third decade of regulation next year. Of when we actually started issuing certifications and licenses.
I remember.
You were here.
So we've covered what the losses are. We have to have increases, biennial increases. We've covered the let's not price ourselves out of the market because the market will only bear so much. But we still need to cover some costs, and my pen is cover the cost of the credit cards, because most people use credit cards nowadays. Even 10 years ago, not so much. Now most of expenses come through credit cards, and then the merchants know that, and so the merchants jack those values. So I think those are some recoupable expenses. Is there any other thoughts and ideas and concerns or otherwise for this topic?
Member Ott, piggybacking on what Nate was saying, like I think I know Washington PIs has a tiered system, unarmed and armed. You know, if someone is willing to pay a higher price for a license that, or, you know, a certification or whatever that gets them whatever they need to fulfill that, but lots of people might not, that seems like a way to bring in revenue that both, you know, separates the marketplace, which is good for us, and could potentially, you know, be another revenue source.
Would an endorsement subcommittee to flesh this out be something we should consider?
Susie Herring for the record, I actually wanted to ask a clarifying question on that. So we already charge more for the ARM certification. I know when we were talking of like Washington's endorsement, everybody goes for the unarmed certification. And then if they want to add a firearm, then it adds on, and Nate, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, you add an endorsement, but the endorsement stays with the employer. It doesn't stay with the individual. And so when you move from place to place, you have to apply for that endorsement again, I think is what it is. I'm not sure. I don't think it more than $10, but I'd like to hear if there was additional endorsements that you were considering.
So, and we'll start in order. Member Flaw, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to bring, if we want to talk about additional resources for certification, has it been, I know it was quite a while ago, but has it ever been looked at, since I'm in the alarm monitoring industry, technicians who are actually entering people's homes and installing alarm systems, they're not certified in any way through DPSST, but alarm monitors are. Is that something that we could look into adding?
Susie Herring for the record, that has come up quite a bit. And it would be legislation that would have to change because they're currently exempt in the statute of requiring certification. And I don't know, did you want to tack on anything with that?
No,
That's the guy, yeah.
That's the baseline. That's the statutory exemption.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, when
the
the law,
company requested that statutory exemption at the
at the
time,
beginning,
at
yeah.
the beginning, yeah, so.
Up next, Vice Chair Nakasone, go ahead.
Thank you, Nakasone, for the record. Two suggestions. One, Chair lends an excellent idea on the press. I would piggyback on that and point out that one of the biggest ways to increase income is to incentivize more people to join the industry. Security is a viable career. It is a stepping stone career into public safety, law enforcement, dispatching, government work, all of those things. So reaching out to our public safety partners on the rest of the DPSST side and seeing if we can get some help with educating the general public from their standpoints to consider private security as a stepping stone. I think back in the day, it was very much so a stepping stone into that sort of work. And it kind of has pivoted since then. But if we could get back to that model, I would think our public safety partners would highly appreciate that. Other idea I had, and this is just off the cuff, and I realize the inceptive nature of this idea is, can the department utilize private investigators to assist with compliance investigations? That wouldn't solve the state budgetary issue, but would that be cheaper than hiring FTE on a case-by-case basis?
Susie Herring for the record. We did explore at one point APTs, like being able to use agency part-time individuals, but that's been a long time. And so I'd hate to use that as an example without exploring it any further. I don't know what the process of that would be able to
Right.
get
I feel
those
like
vacancies.
we
Wow.
still have to have them as employees of the agency to be able to perform our compliance work, which is going back to that well, we have to ask for permission to add employees to our roster from the state. Whether if they want to say no, they'll tell us no, and then we're stuck.
Yeah.
Because there's clearances and yeah, it would be lovely if we could outsource, get some contract workers to do that, but I don't think that that's an actual legally viable option for us. APPs would have been because they are part-time employees here.
Yeah. Member Ralph?
So I was going to mention, so you kind of covered it. What if you created a licensing program for compliance or something along the lines where somebody can create that license online? We'll just call it compliance check or whatever you want to call it. Have anybody from that's either instructor or private security, like private investigator, or somebody that has more credentials than just unarmed security. They go get that license online, kind of like an executive manager, but for compliance. Goes on there, takes the test, gets the license. The license gets approved by DPSST. The DPSST uses those people that have those licenses to contract with them to go to do compliance checks or to do something to do a contractual rate. You have people that are certified doing it through a program that maybe we collectively could help create or something along those lines, and then those contractors go out. That way it lightens the load on DPSST a little bit, could do like small compliance checks in our zone or our region. It lightens the load on DPSST. You wouldn't have to pay a full-time employee, just a contracted rate. And that's something that could come up with budget or whatever. And then you can have those people go out and do your compliance checks. So that way DPSST can stay at home base or do rooted there. So that way more compliance checks can get done, or create, if you want to do this like the board like this right here, where we're going to volunteer our time, we have volunteer hours to be part of this, to be able to go out and do that. Another thought that I have, you speak on Washington, where you have to get endorsements with every single company you work for, which is true. The company has to own the license. Washington also has rifle, and they also have shotgun qualifications. Is there a way that DPSST, and I know this takes a lot of work, to create more licenses so there's more revenue coming into DPSST to allow for a bigger budget?
That was a lot.
I can also write an email just stating kind of my points.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious if there's ways we can, I know we can't be full-time employees, but maybe there's a way that we can get licensed to do certain things with DPSST to help lighten that workload for you guys, so you can do, if there's a bigger compliance check or something that you guys can more put focus on, and let people that are certified to go out and do those instead. So that way, I don't know, it's just a thought that I have. Is there something that we could do with that?
Susie Heron for the record. I'd like to think about that a little bit more. I know we talked about something similar for instructor investigations, like having master instructors, and then we came across like a kind of a conflict of interest with that. But I also know that, and maybe I'm going to look to either you, Jennifer, Fire has the 4 individuals, I'm not sure what they're called.
Fire has a district liaison
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
It's volunteer, but
Okay.
again, the reminder there is all of the fire certification program is
It's
volunteer.
volunteer. Yeah.
So the district liaison officer is a intermediary coordinator between DPSST and the regional areas, helping a fire region in Eastern Oregon make sure that they're meeting all of their training requirements and all of their training requirement documentation. So they're a helpful guide and a resource, but they're not enforcement.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But maybe we can't enforce things, but we can notate things and report it back to DPSST, and then DPSST continues their investigation from there.
Can you send me an email, Travis?
What's that?
Can you send me an email?
Of course I can. Yeah, I can lay all that out for you, and we can go from there. And just so I'm aware of who, was it you, Susie, that wanted that?
Yes, please.
Perfect.
Sorry,
Just
thank
clarify.
you.
Thank you.
Interesting thought.
Yeah. This fire
Not
has all
gonna-
different levels.
Yeah, I have like 80 of them.
How do they manage that? I don't know.
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nakasone for the record. I'm still thinking through this kind of red tape at the state level to add staffing capacity to the program. Is it strictly budgetary or are there additional permission constraints? Like if we had another 20,000 constituents come into the industry literally overnight, and you went to them and said, we've got this big pot of money, how much staff would that, or how much capacity would that get us? I mean, are there additional things other than just budget, or is that a big bottleneck?
Well, Marie Atwood, for the record, what you described is essentially exactly what happened the last time we were able to add FTEs was because of the changes to entities, right? We were granted what, 3 positions when that change occurred. So usually adding employees goes hand in hand with some sort of legislative shift that is going to change or substantially increase the service level we have to provide. Because for us to ask for additional employees, we have to have kind of an extreme amount of justification for it. And typically we kind of package all of that up. We're making our policy option package proposals a lot of times going hand in hand with a legislative concept. The red tape is severe.
Nakasone for the record, for the group, what I'm hearing is the biggest bottleneck is there's going to have to be a legislative change to move the needle significantly on the whole topic one way or another.
Last part. I didn't catch that last part, Nate.
I said from what I'm hearing is there's going to need to be a legislative change of some sort to move the needle significantly on the matter. Would that be a fair characterization?
Susie Heron for the record. Yes, I mean, to your point, the example of the extra 20,000 individuals and then now needing processors to process all the apps that are coming in or doing compliance checks. I mean, you'd have justification at that point to show that you had the funding to pay for the positions and request it, but whether or not they would be approved and being able to sustain in those positions as well. But yeah, I'm not familiar with enough with the request process of what that looks like and how we would go about doing something like that. But I don't think we're at that point because we don't even have the funding to pay for the positions necessarily that we have currently.
Anybody's wheels spinning here? Yes.
I know, that's why the room's quiet.
Yeah, so just knowing process though, Lindsay, for the record, to do statute change can take some years. So if we're looking at 30 and 31, we might think about that because right now we're 27 and 9. So we might think about what does that long-term thing look like? What's, because right now we're just a few years out and, what's our long-term goal? So right now we're just budgeting short-term.
Yeah.
So have you guys looked at the long-term budget ideas, like a 10-year, a 5 and a 10?
I would love that.
Okay.
We just haven't had the capability.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we put something else in the statute, that's going to take your time. Okay. Well, I would imagine anybody in this room would be willing to sit down and have further conversations in a less formal setting for any of those income, expenses, endorsements. So your guys' call, you're the bosses.
Do you mean in terms of having like a work group?
Yeah, work group, if anybody wants to give more input. Like off the clock here.
Travis Shaw, for the record, I'd be very interested in that.
Nakasone, for the record, I volunteer too.
You got boots on the ground right here.
Right, oh yeah.
Any other thoughts for the good of the order?
Nakasone, for the record, I just want to say a big thank you to the department and the staff for putting together those slides. I know it probably wasn't fun putting the rest of your workload on hold to do that. I know historically I have spoken strongly against fee increases and the importance of keeping fees low, but at the same time, I absolutely value the department continuing on providing that regulation. So thank you for doing all that work. I was doing a lot of research and looking into things on my own since our last meeting, and that presentation actually answered a good portion of my questions. And so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Wow, good of the order. Love it. I think we've reached the end.
I still have a few things,
Yeah.
Chair.
Oh, oh my God. Okay, I am so sorry.
We got more.
Oh, yeah, you referenced other speakers.
I did.
Okay, we've only had one.
If I go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Susie Herring, for the record. So I did mention as part of our conversation that we've had about 20 plus compliance checks happening since the last meeting. In fact, the team is going out tomorrow as well. So they've been going out, hitting some of the events for the weekends and doing a great job. We are fully staffed right now too, it's worth mentioning that. Let's see, I've got a couple other things here I wanted to mention. You may have seen some updates with our website. Those of you that have been around for a while have known Sherry Elwood, and she's been working out of class with the IT team as part of our requirements to get our website up to date for the federal regulations for ADA compliance. And so she has been working on that both with our website and other programs website here within the agency. And there's been a couple little hiccups here and there. So you may look at the website one day and it looks one way, or you clicked on a link and it was working and now it's not. If you're seeing something like that, I just wanted to announce, maybe please reach out to us so we can move towards those functioning again. But we are still working on it. It's a work in progress. It's not done by any means, but we're getting there. Let's see, we've got Crystal Maroney. She's our learning and development specialist. She's been avidly working on updates for the ARM curriculum, as you all have been hearing us talk about that the last, feels like a decade, but it's probably been a good portion of 2 or 3 positions in that learning and development specialist. But she's been doing a great job working with COI right now on some storyboards and looking at different modules for that. So we're actively moving in the right direction with her, and the work that she's doing has been great. She's got an unarmed instructor development course coming up at the end of the month. And she's been doing fabulous with those. She has not been passing every attendee, which is great because we're looking at quality versus quantity with these instructors. As some of you know, just working in the industry, that we've been having quite a few instructors under investigation for not training the curriculum to its capacity and other issues that come up with violations for instructors. We have the entity work group. I know this is not the recommending body for that, but just sharing that we do have the entity work group right now looking at the entity rules. And we do have a legislative concept, like a placeholder, in case there's anything that needs to be changed for that. But we're looking at things that needed further clarification, or maybe some ease of processing of applications, we've been running on those rules for a couple of years now, and it was due time to look at those and making sure that they held the intent of the legislation. And let's see, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Marie had mentioned the fees, the DAS approval process went through today, so those fees will be in effect. The first go around of those will be September 1st. So there'll be outward messaging of that going out tomorrow for private security, private investigators, and entities. And keep in mind, we did already send a message regarding to the fingerprint increase, bad timing, but it is what it is. So the FBI raised their fees $3. So the fingerprint processing fee went from 45 to 48. So that does also affect those applicants that are being affected by the 10% increase in the certification fees. And let's see, I did want to mention, just kind of tagging on what you were talking about, the spreadsheets, Nate, was that we will definitely at the next meeting now start to present more information for the group, seeing revenue and expenditures. So you won't just see like a big number as you saw today. I mean, that was pretty impactful, but we'd like to keep you in the know of just kind of where we're at with those. And that will be on the agenda for every meeting following this. And then lastly, I wanted to mention, we're having issues with our card printer right now. And so we've got some backlog of some cards. So if you hear some talk, we're doing our best to get our cards here as fast as we can. Ribbon as fast as we can. Mary Lou told me today that ribbon wasn't going to get here till after Labor Day, which is not okay. So we're going to have to figure out what we can do to get the ribbon from a different vendor. So please let us know if there's any issues with that, but we're doing the best to make sure that we can get out those armed folks when we do have the cards and the ink in-house. So apologize for that, but we're doing the best we can. And that is all I have. I will take any questions if anybody has any questions of me.
Member Schultz, go ahead.
Hi, Susie. I just wanted to say I appreciate knowing that you're having issues with the badge printer as well, because I think we have the same vendor and it's been a rough like 3 weeks for us. So good to hear it's not just us.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, but thank you.
Vice Chair Nakasone.
Thank you, Nakasone, for the record. Are the entity work groups going to be posted on YouTube? I wanted to check those out. I haven't seen them yet.
They are up there as of today, I believe. Yes, so we've had 2 meetings and the 3rd meeting is scheduled for August 27th.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
I don't have anything else. You've heard enough from me.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, okay, good. Then we will close this meeting and our next one will be November 17th at 1:30 p.m. right here. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.